Oftentimes, we forget to just simply look around ourselves and look at all the blessings in our life. Because honestly, so many times, especially in this culture, it is so hard to find contentment when we aren't grateful for the things we already have.
And who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
Welcome back to the Winter Arc Podcast. My name is Grant, and this is journal entry number 4 for September the 5th of 2025. And so I wanted to kind of talk about gratefulness and thankfulness, because so many times we kind of just look at the negative that's going on in our life. My wife always says to me, Grant, you are your biggest enemy. And it's kind of true. There are things that I just say to myself, that I say to myself in my head, and that I overthink, that I say to myself over and over again. And I honestly am just my biggest enemy. I say so many negative things to myself. I'm just a negative person to myself all the time, because I think that in a way I'm like, oh, well, maybe that can push me to become a better person. But in reality, it kind of comes back to the same conversation I was having yesterday about the fact that our perfection is actually an inherent selfishness, because it ultimately takes our joy away, and it takes other people's joy away from themselves. And I'm glad that I have such an encouraging wife, because she points out the reality that, guess what? You are inside your head too much, and you need to realize that things aren't as bad as you realize. I remember recently I was talking to a friend on the phone, and I was just like, complaining about different things and just being super negative about just life in general, and feeling like, well, this business idea isn't working out, or this idea isn't working out for me, and blah, 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 blah. And I want to find this kind of job, or I want to do this in my job, and I want to do this as a career, and so on, right? But the reality is that in the middle of my complaining and the end of my negativity rant, basically, to him, he just said simply and bluntly, and this is exactly what I needed to hear. He said, oh, that's so sad that you have such a great job. Oh, that's so sad that you have a loving wife. Oh, that's so sad that you just are actually thriving in life. And it just made me stop, and it just made me realize, wow, I am not thankful, and I am not grateful for the things that I already have around me. Because so often we compare ourselves to everything else and everyone else on social media and in our culture, because that's what our culture is. That's what a huge chunk of the American culture is. It's just about comparison. And it's just about, how can I one up the next person? How can I keep up with the Joneses mentality? And so the thing is that mentality is broken when we're willing to look around ourselves and be grateful and be thankful for the things that ultimately, I believe, as a Christian, God has given to us. And so, I'm not going to get super preachy, but I do believe that a part of my journey to become more productive in life, and just become more productive in my personal life, but not only my personal life, but just in my professional life too, is the fact that I believe strongly that a lot of my motivations and a lot of what I think about productivity comes from the way I live as a Christian. And so if you aren't a Christian, I just ask you to bear with me, but it's just the reality that we have to be thankful to God for everything that he's given us, because he's called us to be stewards of every single little thing that he's given us. That can be our time, money, and talents, whatever it is, but especially time and money. Because how we manage our time and how we manage our money tells a lot about who we are as a person, and how thankful we are, and how we view the gifts that God has given us. Like, for instance, throughout the summer, I had a lot of issues with my cars. And the one car needed a whole motor. The other car literally needed something every other week. And it was just like chaos. And it was just like, I was talking to a financial advisor that I know. And I just said to her, I just feel like it's not worth to pay the car loan on this stupid car anymore, that I have to replace the motor, because I don't want to replace the motor. Like, the bank's just going to repossess it. It'll be fine. And she said, but you have given your word that you would pay the loan. And to God, that matters. And I think that that's something that we often don't think about, that God is even in our finances and in our financial decisions. And it just convicted me, and it made me realize, do I want to be a good steward of the things that God has given me? Because ultimately, The loan isn't mine. The car isn't mine. The problem isn't mine. It's all God. So I can either try to strive with it and try to come up with a human answer and try to be like, well, I'm not going to pay the loan. I'm just going to have the bank repossess the broken car and then I'll be fine, scot-free, right? No, it actually would have affected me in the long run because it would have affected my credit. It would have affected a lot of different things financially. But the reality is that when she encouraged me with those words and those convicting words, it didn't really make me feel bad about it. It made me feel slightly encouraged and made me realize, okay, if I'm going to say yes, and if I'm going to be a good steward of the loan on this car that I have for a car that literally doesn't run right now and literally needs a whole new motor from South Korea, that's because that's where we had to order the motor from because all the other motors in the US were so expensive for whatever reason. I don't really know how that makes sense. But I chose to be a good steward because I was encouraged and convicted. And through that experience, it has given me a level of thankfulness and gratefulness of the fact that if we are willing to be good stewards of the things that God has given us and the responsibilities that God has given us, then he's going to be faithful on his part, which is blessing us more than we could ever imagine. And sure, does blessing come in the form of, here's $5,000 to fix all your issues with both cars? No. Do you know what it comes in the form of? It comes in the form of wisdom. It comes in the form of encouragement. It comes in the form of your family being able to help you. It comes in the form of many different facets. And when we are willing to be good stewards of the things that God has given us throughout, whether it be our time, money, treasures, or talents, then we are able to literally live in his will for our lives. And I think that's something that's encouraged me because guess what? Tonight, I'm literally sitting in the car that used to have the motor problem. And I'm sitting in the car right now because my in-laws are visiting this weekend. And long story short, they're sleeping. And so I had to go and record this episode in the car. But here I am in the car that caused me so much of a headache this summer and made me realize so many different things about thankfulness and gratefulness about the fact that this car isn't mine. This is God's. And if I'm not being a good steward of it, and if I'm not being a good steward of the things that he's given me, then I'm not going to reap the benefits and I'm not going to reap the blessings that I would have otherwise learned and would have otherwise gained from being able to say, you know what, God, this isn't mine, but you've entrusted me with it and you've made me a steward over this thing. And I think that's such a perfect example. And another thing that actually ties in with this whole thing, especially about the story about my car this summer, is the fact in Habakkuk 3:17 through 18, it says, though the fig tree should not blossom nor fruit to be on the vines, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. A lot of where my motivation comes from and a lot of where my view on productivity and just growth and personal growth comes from is from the fact of I believe that there's a God that loves me and he has a plan for my life and he has a will for my life. And a lot of what I'm going to be talking on this podcast is about the fact that there are certain things in life and in your personal life that are going to be accomplished only through you honoring what God is giving you. So many times as Christians, we try to put God on this weird box and try to say, oh, he's not interested in my car problems. He's not interested in my finances. He's not interested in just my general like day-to-day routines or the things that I think are interesting or the things that I care about. No, he cares about every single facet of your life. And if you think differently, then you're wrong, because if he loves you, he loves every part of you because he made every single part of you and he made every single interest, honestly, of what you are interested in. And so he cares of what you think about certain hobbies. He cares about what you think about certain ideas. And he cares about even the stupid things of life that happen to us, like car troubles and more. I learned that it's really funny. Me and my wife came to the point where we were just like, why should we be worried about the cars anymore? We're just going to fix them when the problem arises. Why get stressed out about it? And that's literally the attitude we started to have. And we started to have this, at least my wife did, because she really rubbed off on me with this, is that the fact of we needed to be thankful for the things we had. We could either be really, really negative and really, really uptight about everything, or we can actually be thankful for the things that God has given us. For instance, even though our other car needed a ton of work this summer too, we still had the car. And then when we didn't have that car for a weekend, guess what? People at our church blessed us and said, oh, hey, here, I'm not using this weekend. Take the car so that you can get to church and other things like that. And that was such a blessing. And I'm so thankful for people who are in my life who encourage me to not only stay in the things that God has ultimately given stewardship over, but also of the people who encourage me and the people who have just helped us over the summer, especially with our car problems and just the stupid things of life with that. But the reality is that those things aren't stupid, and they actually make us realize that none of this is our own. This is all God's. And the sooner that we're able to be thankful for the things that we have, for the breath in our lungs, and for every little gift from above, then we will be able to actually have a life of contentment. 1 Thessalonians 5:18, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. And so that's the encouragement that I want to leave. And if you aren't a Christian and you have listened to this podcast or you're listening to this episode, this has sounded really preachy, but this is just the reality of what I really believe in. The reality of that I really believe that there's a God so personal in my life that he even cares about my stupid car troubles, that he even cares about just our daily lives and our daily routines. And through this experience, it has really taught me things about myself and just patience and obviously thankfulness and gratefulness through every single thing that happens. And so that's what's really been on my heart about the fact of I can either be super, super frustrated and get in my head like yesterday, or I can actually give thanks to God and give thanks and be grateful for the things around me, be thankful for my wife, be thankful for my family, be thankful for the precious daughter coming into my life at the end of February, and be thankful for the car that was literally just fixed and brought today back to my apartment. Or I could be super negative and be like, oh, why didn't I end up in this career? Or why am I not building a business right now? Or why am I not doing XYZ? At the end of the day, it's all about perspective. And if we are trying to aim for, as I said yesterday, if we are trying to aim for this impossible abstract view of perfection in our life, we're just going to stress ourselves and everyone else around us. And it's not going to be a life of contentment. It's going to be a life of strife. Striving is not the will of God. It is us being willing with open hands to the things that God has given us and saying, God, how do you want me to steward this? And that can be our time, talent, treasures, or money. And I think that just even applies to my stupid car problems. And so I just want to encourage you with this whole podcast and with this whole idea of gratefulness and thankfulness, especially if you're a Christian. And I'll just leave you with those thoughts. But thank you guys so much for listening. This has been journal entry number 4, September the 5th of 2025. Goodbye.